Back in the 80s, you didn't need a complicated plot to make a blockbuster. All you really needed was a sunny beach, a wild party, a few guitars wailing in the background. It was an era when rock and roll met neon colors and the spring break fantasy exploded onto VHS tapes across America, blending carefree parties, a touch of danger, and a lot of sun-kissed freedom. These films weren't trying to change the world. They were celebrating it, in all its wild, loud, and gloriously over-the-top glory. And few captured that electric mix better than Nightmare Beach, 1988, a slasher that turned spring break into a lethal playground where the soundtrack roared just as loud as the motorcycles. And nobody was safe once the sun went down. Set during the wildest week of spring break in Miami, it was everything an 80s beach horror should be. Nightmare Beach was directed by Umberto Lenzi, a master of Italian horror, although he distanced himself from the final cut by using the pseudonym Harry Kirkpatrick. Lenzi knew how to lace even the sunniest scenes with a sense of creeping doom, and here his fingerprints are everywhere, in the tense crowd shots, the claustrophobic party scenes, the sudden silences before the scream. The cast includes John Saxon, a veteran of horror classics like A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Michael Parks, delivering a sharp-edged performance as a sheriff who may have more blood on his hands than the killer himself. Their gravitas gives the film an unexpected punch, balancing the bikini contests and beer-fueled chaos with a real sense of menace. Visually, the movie captures that specific late 80s grit. Bright neon signs flickering against black skies, motorcycles slicing through humid streets, and sunburned kids oblivious to the danger pooling around their ankles. It's less about plot twists and more about atmosphere, the hot, sticky, buzzing feeling of being young, reckless, and just a little bit invincible, until you're not. And maybe that's the real genius of Nightmare Beach. It weaponizes the very things that made spring break irresistible. Freedom, excess, abandon, all turned against the characters in a blood-soaked crescendo of surf and static. But not every film about endless summer nights needed a masked killer to spark chaos. Some just needed a few aging bachelors, a beach full of bikinis, and a plan that could only go hilariously wrong. If Nightmare Beach showed another side of spring break, Hard Bodies is its wild, sun-drenched, no-holds-barred cousin, a pure celebration of bad decisions, worse pickup lines, and endless golden beaches. Released in 1984, Hard Bodies taps into a very specific 80s fantasy. What if you could bottle youth, charm, and coolness and sell it to anyone willing to pay the price? The story follows Scotty, a young, tanned beach hustler with the kind of effortless charm that only exists in California dreams. When three recently divorced, and very out of touch, older men arrive in town, desperate to relive their lost youth, they hire Scotty to teach them the fine art of seduction. Or at least, how not to embarrass themselves at every turn. What follows is a parade of outrageous misadventures, botched flirting, cringe-worthy fashion choices, and lessons in how, and how not, to pick up women on the beach. All set against the shimmering backdrop of Malibu, where every sunset looks like a music video, and every party feels like it could spin out of control at any second. Hard Bodies isn't subtle, and it's not trying to be. It fully embraces the excess, the absurdity, and the carefree chaos that defined 80s beach culture. Interestingly, the film was one of the earliest to be specifically marketed towards the exploding home video rental scene. VHS tapes were flying off the shelves in the mid-80s, and Hard Bodies was exactly the kind of cheeky, colorful, semi-naughty fun that teenagers, and more than a few adults, wanted to sneak home for a Friday night laugh. The soundtrack, loaded with high-energy rock tracks, keeps the momentum high, while the beach montages practically drip with suntan oil and optimism. Every frame feels like an ad for the kind of endless summer you know you'll never have, but wish you did. And while the humor is over the top, there's a strange charm to the film's complete lack of cynicism. Everyone's here for a good time, not a long time. Hard Bodies proved that you didn't need a complex plot to make an unforgettable movie. Just a sunny beach, a cooler full of cheap beer, and a dream that the next wave might bring something, or someone, new. But Hard Bodies was just the beginning. The early 80s would unleash a whole wave of beach party films that pushed the neon fantasy even further. and few did it with more sun-soaked abandon than the Beach Girls. If Hard Bodies was a loud and proud anthem to 80s party culture, the Beach Girls turned the volume up even higher, and then threw the rulebook straight into the ocean. Released in 1982, The Beach Girls is one of the earliest examples of the beach party revival that swept through VHS rental stores like a tidal wave. The setup is gloriously simple. Two free-spirited friends, Ginger and Ducky, arrive at a coastal mansion for a quiet summer vacation, and immediately decide that quiet is overrated. Instead, they turn the place into party headquarters, inviting surfers, rock bands, and just about anyone with a swimsuit, or without one, to join the chaos. Plot? Barely. Character development? Optional. But energy? Off the charts. The movie captures something rare. That golden feeling of summer freedom, where the days stretch forever and the nights promise nothing but trouble. It's packed with neon bikinis, big hair, and scenes that feel like they were filmed by someone who just wanted an excuse to hang out at the beach. And honestly, can you blame them? Visually, The Beach Girls is pure early 80s eye candy. Pastel convertibles rolling down coastal highways, beachfront barbecues that spiral into dance parties, and shimmering ocean horizons that make you forget real life even exists. One of the standout elements is the soundtrack. A non-stop blast of upbeat pop and soft rock that makes every scene feel like a summer commercial you never want to end. Songs bleed into montages of laughter, slow-motion volleyball games, and endless beachside flirting. Fun fact, The Beach Girls was one of the early VHS Gold Rush titles. Films that weren't huge hits in theaters, but exploded in popularity once home video gave audiences permission to watch whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. In the comfort of their living rooms, audiences embraced movies that weren't about critical acclaim. They were about fun. In a way, The Beach Girls set the tone for a whole era of carefree cinema. Movies where the only real rule was that no one could be too dressed, too serious, or too far from the nearest stereo. But summer wasn't just about throwing parties. Sometimes it was about figuring out adulthood badly. Which brings us to Summer Job, a film that showed that working under the sun can be just as chaotic as partying in it. By the late 80s, the beach party movie formula had evolved. It wasn't just about endless vacations anymore. It was about the awkward, hilarious, and often sunburned transition into adulthood. Summer Job, released in 1989, captured that spirit perfectly. The film follows a group of recent high school graduates who land summer jobs at a luxurious beachfront resort. In theory, they're supposed to learn responsibility, earn a little cash, and prepare for the real world. In practice, they discover that work is a lot more complicated, and a lot more fun than they expected. Between sneaking off to forbidden parties, falling hopelessly in and out of love, and botching every possible task, these teenagers turn what should be a quiet job into a series of wild, sun-drenched misadventures. Summer Job taps into a very specific kind of nostalgia. That fleeting moment when the future feels wide open, but the present feels way more interesting. The resort setting is a perfect backdrop. Sprawling pools, glistening beaches, shady palm trees swaying in the breeze. Every frame feels soaked in late 80s optimism, right before the grunge era came along and made everything moody again. What's charming about Summer Job is that, despite the expected doses of beachside flirting and ridiculous hijinks, there's a genuine sweetness underneath. The characters aren't mean-spirited. They're just young, impulsive, and very much trying to figure it all out. Badly, of course, but that's part of the fun. As with many films of its kind, the soundtrack plays a huge role, blending synth-heavy pop with breezy rock tunes that practically smell like coconut oil. Summer Job might not have the cult fame of some of its louder cousins, but it captures something essential about the late 80s beach movie era. The belief that summer, and youth itself, could last forever if you just kept chasing the next adventure. But for those who weren't working, partying, or running from masked killers, there was another kind of spring break fantasy. An all-out, neon-soaked, beer-fueled celebration that left logic, and sometimes dignity, far behind. And no movie captured that wild, untamed spirit better than Spring Break. Before the 80s fully gave themselves over to neon excess, Spring Break in 1983 set the gold standard for what a wild beach movie could be, and for many still is. Directed by Sean S. Cunningham, the same mind behind Friday the 13th, Spring Break swapped out masked killers for neon swimwear, endless kegs of beer, and an unapologetic celebration of youthful abandon. The story follows two sets of college roommates who accidentally get booked into the same motel room in Fort Lauderdale during the height of spring break madness. Rather than split up, they join forces, and from that moment the movie becomes a full-speed, sun-drenched sprint through parties, beach contests, bar fights, and romantic disasters. Spring Break captures a specific energy that's impossible to fake. That feeling when you're young, half-broke, slightly sunburned, and absolutely convinced that this will be the greatest week of your life. Visually, it's a love letter to 80s hedonism. Neon lights buzzing against humid night skies, packed pool parties, and that constant shimmering heat rising from the asphalt. The costumes are pure 80s fantasy. Tiny bikinis, baggy shorts, and sunglasses, so reflective they could blind a satellite. And the soundtrack? Wall-to-wall hits, with bands like Heartsboy 38 Special and NRBQ setting the tone for a week of no consequences and even fewer responsibilities. Every scene feels like a snapshot from a vacation brochure nobody's parents would ever approve. Interestingly, Spring Break wasn't just successful at the box office, it became a cultural touchstone. It helped solidify the image of Fort Lauderdale as the ultimate spring break destination, at least until the city itself eventually had to crack down on the chaos. Watching it today is like stepping into a time capsule of carefree rebellion. A world before Instagram, before cell phones, when your only priority was making memories you probably wouldn't even remember the next morning. But while Spring Break reveled in the non-stop party, another beachside story was unfolding. This time with a young Johnny Depp, an upscale resort, and trouble hiding behind every luxury towel. Which brings us to Private Resort. By the mid-80s, the beach movie formula had gotten an upgrade. Bigger locations, crazier setups, and fresh young faces ready to dive into trouble. Enter Private Resort, 1985. A gleaming, sun-soaked romp set not on a wild public beach, but in the luxurious playgrounds of a high-end Florida resort. This was early Johnny Depp, fresh-faced, mischievous, and years away from pirate ships and Tim Burton collaborations. Alongside Rob Morrow, Depp plays one half of a troublemaking duo who check into the resort for a weekend of, let's say, less than honorable intentions. Their mission? Simple. Chase girls, dodge security, and cause as much harmless chaos as possible. But Private Resort isn't just about poolside flirting and mistaken identities, though there's plenty of both. It's about capturing that fantasy of a summer escape where adult rules barely exist, and every corridor hides a new adventure or a new disaster. The resort setting lets the movie play with a different kind of excess. Champagne brunches, shady jewel thieves, eccentric millionaires, and glamorous pool parties that look like postcards from a dream you're not entirely sure you should be having. Visually, it's pure 80s decadence. Oversized sunglasses, pastel suits, massive inflatable pool toys, and lobbies decked out in more fake plants and marble tiles than any reasonable architect should allow. The humor is broad, leaning heavily on slapstick chases, double entendres, and just the right amount of absurdity. Yet beneath the madness, you can see the early charm that would turn Johnny Depp into a Hollywood icon. A mix of boyish energy and sly wit that's magnetic even when the plot occasionally spirals out of control. While Private Resort didn't make waves at the box office, it found a second life on home video, where curious fans could watch a rising star cut his teeth in a world of poolside parties and madcap escapades. And it fits perfectly into the larger tapestry of 80s beach movies, a reminder that sometimes the best adventures happen when you're technically not supposed to be there in the first place. But not all sunny escapades needed luxury hotels. Some just needed a small strip of sand, a rundown shop, and a business plan that could only lead to hilarious disaster. By 1986, the formula for a perfect beach movie was clear. You needed a sunny backdrop, a few wild dreams, and enough barely controlled chaos to keep things interesting. Malibu Bikini Shop leaned into that formula with a grin, delivering a breezy, feel-good comedy that's about as 80s as a neon headband at a roller disco. The setup is pure wish fulfillment. Two brothers, Alan and Todd, inherit a struggling bikini shop in the heart of Malibu. Fresh out of college and uncertain about their futures, they see an opportunity. Not just to turn a profit, but to dive headfirst into a world of sun, sand, and endless possibilities. Of course, running a bikini shop isn't quite as simple as it sounds. Between eccentric employees, demanding customers, and their own spectacular inexperience, the brothers quickly find themselves in over their heads. But somehow, they never lose sight of the bigger picture. Fun comes first. Visually, Malibu Bikini Shop is a living postcard of mid-80s Southern California. Sparkling beaches, convertible cars with the tops permanently down, and racks upon racks of brightly colored swimwear. Every scene feels drenched in sunshine and optimism. There's a lightness to the film that makes it stand out. It doesn't try to force drama or tension. Instead, it floats along like a perfect beach day, full of small mishaps, lucky breaks, and that feeling that anything could happen if you just lean into the adventure. The characters, too, are drawn with an affectionate touch. Goofy but likable, bumbling but sincere. Alan's straight-laced nature and Todd's wild energy create a classic odd couple dynamic that carries the movie's heart. And while Malibu Bikini Shop might not have the cult fame of other 80s beach films, it represents the end of a particular era. A time when a simple story about sunshine, freedom, and youthful ambition could carry an entire movie. Watching it today feels like digging up a seashell from a long-forgotten summer. A little rough around the edges, maybe, but full of warmth and echoes of a time when the world seemed a lot simpler and a lot more fun. Before beach movies were all about parties and neon bikinis, Blood Beach showed audiences that sometimes the real danger was hiding right under their feet. Released in 1980, Blood Beach takes the sunny, carefree setting of Santa Monica and twists it into a slow-burn nightmare. Instead of sharks lurking offshore, something, or someone, is waiting beneath the sand itself. One by one, people walking on the beach are pulled screaming into the ground, vanishing without a trace. It's a brilliant hook, turning the beach, the ultimate symbol of freedom and relaxation, into a place of terror. The film stars Burt Young, John Saxon, yes, him again, the ultimate cult movie survivor, and Marianne Hill, lending a solid B-movie gravitas to the proceedings. Their characters scramble to figure out what's causing the disappearances, while the community struggles between covering it up to protect tourism or facing a horror they barely understand. Blood Beach leans heavily into atmosphere. The beaches are strangely empty. The fog rolls in just a little too thick. The sense of isolation, even in bright daylight, creeps into every frame. It's slow, eerie, and doesn't rely on gore or cheap jumps. Instead, it builds an almost old-school dread, something closer to a 50s monster movie transplanted into Reagan-era America. The tagline said it best. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, you can't even get to it. In the world of beach movies, Blood Beach stands alone, a reminder that sometimes the greatest threat isn't a party gone wild. It's the quiet moments when you think you're safe. But after so much lurking terror, it's time to get back to a different kind of danger. The romantic, high-speed kind. And that's exactly what Dangerous Curves delivers. Closing out the decade with a burst of energy, Dangerous Curves, 1989, delivers exactly what its title promises. Fast cars, faster romances, and a road trip that spins completely out of control. The plot follows Chuck and Wally, two college students tasked with delivering a luxury Porsche from LA to Lake Tahoe for a client. Seems simple, right? Except nothing ever stays simple for long, especially when two beautiful women cross their path, dragging them into a whirlwind of stolen cars, mistaken identities, and high-speed hijinks. If Blood Beach made the beach scary, Dangerous Curves made it thrilling. A bright, fast-moving comedy where the rules of logic take a backseat to good vibes and wild adventures. The film thrives on its chemistry, not just between the leads and the romantic interests, but in the way the whole story feels like a sun-soaked race against boredom. Visually, it's pure 1989. Big hair, sports cars gleaming under the California sun, and fashion choices that seem both ridiculous and perfect. The pacing is brisk, the soundtrack is packed with bubblegum rock, and there's never more than a few minutes between a car chase or a beach flirtation. Dangerous Curves didn't aim to be profound. It aimed to be fun. And sometimes, that's exactly what summer movies are for. grabbing life by the steering wheel and seeing where the road takes you. With dangerous curves, the 80s beach movie era crossed the finish line, loud, proud, and leaving nothing but tire marks, suntan lotion, and unforgettable memories in its wake.